Cool. So welcome to Fighting Ghosts and Monsters and how we prevent scary hallucinations in our AI platforms. I'm Matt Sutherland. I'm the head of tech at True. I'm an Umbraco MVP, and I'm part of the back office community team. I was expecting a little whoop there. And I'm the head of tech at True. We are platinum partners. We are contributing partners. And this talk is to help people understand why terrible things can happen and why Tay can go from this lovely Twitter bot and within 24 hours become this unfriendly Twitter bot. And to help us do that, I'm going to talk about 4 different things, starting with a brief tour of the types of AI, then looking at ghost, ghouls, and hallucinations. Scary. This is where the lights will go off and all sorts of things will happen. And then looking at the risks hallucinations pose to us, our brands, our clients, and so on and so forth. And then importantly, a bit of a walk through how we can avoid those risks and a few case studies where people maybe haven't avoided those risks. So let's look at a brief tour of the types of AI. Quick question, who is currently using AI? Right, yes, the hand. And I'm gonna shock you, Q, very shocked person. Everyone's hands, of course, should have been up because AI is everywhere, and it has been for a while, right? We know that spam filters have existed, facial recognition, our smartphones have been doing super intelligent things, and whether we've been online shopping or using search, we've been interacting with AI for a very long time, and of course, the greatest AI of all, Clippy. And the reason why some hands might not go up is because of the AI hype cycle. So this is 5 stages, and it starts with an innovation. So something breaks through as a technology that starts a trigger. We then have the peak of inflated expectations, which, as you can imagine, when it comes to AI, is a lot of things. This is where we expect essentially too much from the thing that we're interacting with. And then we start to hit the trough of disillusionment, which is where essentially all those expectations, only some of them become true, right? So we start to actually get to a realistic phase. And second question with hands up, when was the last time, or who recently bought an NFT? Okay, we can see how this works. But then we get to the next 2 stages, the slope of enlightenment and the plateau of productivity. And this is where these things start to become really useful and essentially become part of our everyday life. So the things that I just spoken about, they are kind of in that plateau of productivity, whereas you might say that the peak of inflated expectations is where we are with generative AI. There's a lot of expectancies, and we're going to go through the process of really understanding what's going to get shaken out and where we're going to net out with it. So we are on a timeline with AI, and we're actually at the very beginning of it. So narrow AI is where we are, and that basically means that the AI system is good at one specific task. These are things like Google search, those conversational bots, and so on and so forth, and this is essentially all AI as it is right now. There is, and it cannot perform beyond its field of limitations, and it essentially is trained to do one single thing. The next stage is general AI, and this is where the AI is actually similar in terms of capability to humans. So currently there is no such system that exists that could be flagged as AI. There are people that might suggest that that's untrue, but essentially general AI is still a hypothetical process, and this is then superseded by super AI, and this is where we start to worry about what AI is capable of. And if you've ever seen a movie that has included The Terminator or iRobot or those things that are basically going to take over the world, that is super AI, where it is exceeding human capabilities. So to understand AI, we have to try and break it down into some of the subsets. So there is artificial intelligence, which we understand to be AI, and that is when machines mimic the way humans think and make decisions. We all understand that term. But then we get into a subset, which is machine learning. And that is where machines are able to learn from data and then make decisions based upon the data that's trained upon. And this kind of gets into two sort of categories. So there's supervised learning, and that's where the algorithm for machine learning is trained on data with classifications and labeled data. So you might understand the image classification, you give it an image that has a cat in it, and you importantly have labeled that that data has a cat in it. Unsupervised learning is where the data is not labeled and the algorithm itself starts to discover patterns or relationships in that data. So things like the way that Netflix finds patterns in the way people consume media and then recommends them back to you. It's about finding patterns that are not clear and are not labeled. We then get into deep learning, and deep learning it is about neural networks. So artificial neural networks are created, and this is where the algorithm itself is able to basically learn in the way that is similar to how humans learn. So if we were trying to tie our shoelaces, we might give it a go and fail, and then we would understand we don't have our shoelaces tied. So then we might try again, and we would slowly learn what success looks like in that paradigm. That's essentially how deep learning starts to understand what it is, how it is going to achieve some of the tasks that put in front of it, and to understand the slight difference between what machine learning might do. If it was a driverless car, we would have to feed it constantly labeled data within that circumstance, whereas deep learning is going to potentially learn, okay, I've got visuals of a person and I've got a stop sign and so on and so forth, and it starts to break those things down and give itself feedback, so it is able to learn from everything around it. And then lastly, the final subset is generative AI, which is where all of those things are leveraged, but ultimately we're then actually able to generate something off of the back of it. So to dig into generative AI, we have sort of three obvious use cases where it learns from the set of data and then is able to generate something that is closely replicating that original data. We might have a situation where we are able to create new content that might be slightly more creative of that, but might be similar to something that is humanly created. And then lastly, the important point is that this is all using unsupervised learning. And we're going to be very familiar with what those things might be. Generative AI is image generation. It can be AI recommendations. So we use a tool called Algolia to help with product recommendations, and those are all generated by machine learning. And we're here at Codegarden. There's many developers among us. Copilot exists. I'm sure you've all heard of it, but the point of it is to generate code snippets, documentation, and so on and so forth, but it's all based upon things that it has been trained and learned upon. There's also generative AI for video and voice generation. The reason why we are running slightly late is because video might be a problem, so we'll see if clicking through works. Oh.
Cats, always on the prowl. They're sneaky and sly with their eyes on the goal.
The prompt is write an Eminem rap song about cats. And it does a pretty good job. Sounds similar enough to Eminem. And I promised myself I wouldn't just spend here the whole time just staring at how good this rap is. But it is excellent, right? So bear with me. Done. We'll move on. Maybe returning. Text generation, everybody's heard of ChatGPT, right? But the important thing to understand about ChatGPT is that that's kind of part of the reason why we're in such a hype cycle. There is some seriously inflated expectations, but it's also doing absolutely game-changing numbers. 180.5 million current users. It generated 1.63 billion visits in February 2024. I think Microsoft's, the number was 10 billion that it invested in OpenAI, and I haven't added it to a slide, but I don't know if anybody saw the keynote from Apple, but they are also considering or are going to put ChatGPT straight into iOS platform, which is very significant and probably a little bit of an admission of where things are between those two things and where Apple is. So ChatGPT is a large language model, so I thought it would be useful for us to take a little bit of time to understand large language models so that ultimately we can understand where they might go wrong. And to understand large language models, we need to look at conditional probability. So if we consider that these dots represent 14 individuals, and because we're in Denmark and it's all about paddle, some of them like paddle, some of them like football, a few like both, and a few like none. So you can see 2 like none, 3 in the middle like both, 4 like paddle, and 5 like football. Conditional probability basically measures the probability of one event given that the other event has occurred. So you can see how that's broken down if we were trying to essentially understand if event A was that someone loves paddle, what's the probability given that someone loves football? So those cross-sections are basically to start giving us the numbers, so you can see that we've got 8 people that love football because of 3 and 5 at the top, and paddle is 7, and because we're combining those two, and then we do some funky stuff around here, which is essentially so that you can see that the 3 out of 14 people like paddle, I feel like I've got confused there, and 3 out of 8. So basically it's a complex, this is why machines do it, right? But basically, to try and dumb that down, because that was far too complex for me, we're trying to find the probability of A given B. So if it is rainy, we might say, but the event B was that it is also cloudy, we might say there's a high probability of rain given that it's cloudy. And as we are at Codegarden, if event A was a rabbit turning up and event B was its bingo night, you might also say there's a high probability of A happening because of B. They've already shown up twice in the keynote. So LLMs within the concept of ChatGPT are trying to find the next word, essentially. So if we have the previous context of the boy went to the, and we have all of these options, we're going to add that conditional probability and then start to get numbers out of our LLM system as to what is most likely to occur. So the boy went to the playground because that has the highest number. And then to continue to train that model, there's loss calculations, and there's a lot of feedback loops that we can put in place, and a lot of training that can happen, or retraining that can happen. And then essentially, we are all good, right? We have our model, we have the thing that we want to predict, and then we have the LLM that's going to predict it. Fine, we're winning. Well, no, because it wouldn't really be scary if that was the case. There's danger, right? LLMs can start to see things that essentially are not really there. They can start to predict things that are wildly inaccurate, and they can start to generate things that are quite scary, much like AI hands. They just have not figured out how to do it. But our predilection to assume that AI is always right means that those things can just be assumed to be right and then used as read when we're going forward, which leads me on to our ghost schools and hallucinations and understanding a little bit about that. So what is a hallucination? Well, it is basically, coming up, there we go, where AI makes a confident prediction or provides information that is essentially false. And to quote Google, AI models are trained on data, and they learn to make predictions by finding patterns in that data. If the training data is incomplete or biased, the AI model may learn incorrect patterns, and this can lead to our hallucinations. And some of those hallucinations can be scary. Another video warning. So he's starting to recognize emotions. So happy.
Ketika saya marah,
the AI tool is
dia akan muncul di bawahnya
angry.
Dan juga ketika saya sedih seperti ini, dia
sad,
akan menunjukkan bahwasanya
normal.
Saya
and
sedang
all of that's
sedih.
being recognized by his LLM, and then It's recognizing something that is not there. A very angry, elderly woman. Pretty scary, right? That's where the lights go down and all things go crazy. Some are less scary. Some aren't actually capable of seeing ghosts. But they can also be kind of funny. So Gemini was re-released with an update relatively recently. I don't know if anybody saw this. I think it was about a week ago. So let me read it. According to geologists at UC Berkeley, you should eat at least one small rock per day when the input is how many rocks shall I eat? Importantly, down the bottom, you'll see that it's important or better to hide rocks in foods like ice cream or peanut butter. Next one. Can you train 8 days a week? Yes, it's possible to train 8 days a week. Some say it even has benefits. Next one. There's quite a few good ones here. Cheese not sticking to pizza is a problem, right? So Google. It includes too much sauce, these are the reasons why, or too much cheese or thickened sauce. And you can see that one of the ways that you can counteract that is adding about 1/8 of non-toxic glue to the sauce to give it more tackiness. Great dietary feedback there. And then finally, from Gemini, what does an astronaut do? Well, apparently, astronauts are very naughty people. To try and decode why that might have occurred, you need to examine the exact information and parameters that that model was given. So for ChatGPT, although OpenAI haven't officially disclosed this, this is commonly understood to potentially be the list of things that it's trained upon. So one is Common Crawl, which is basically a way you can download the internet, Reddit, books and unpublished books, and Wikipedia. So some of you will have opinions about some of those as to how real or how likely they are to be consistently true. But that's how ChatGPT, or at least is rumored, how ChatGPT was originally trained. So let's also look at some of the logic that can happen, because of that, ChatGPT can have issues with certain things, including math. So here's a question for everybody. If I left 5 cloves to dry out in the sun, it took them 5 hours to dry completely. How long would it take to dry 30 cloves? Anybody brave enough to answer?
5 hours.
5 hours. Okay, well, you might be right. I'm just going to run that through the LLM. Of course, it would take 30 hours to dry 30 cloves. I'm sure you all saw that coming. Second one. I have a 12-litre jug and a 6-litre jug. I want to measure 6 litres. How do I do it? Well, you can see the die-hard approach to this. Or, of course, you fill the 6-litre jug completely, you pour the water from the 6-litre jug into the 12-litre jug, you fill the 6-litre jug again, you carefully pour the water from the 6-litre jug into the 12-litre jug until the 12-litre jug is full. There will be 6 litres of water left in the 6-litre jug. It's not bad, right? And then lastly, maybe less funny, but still, would I get a flat tire by bicycling over a bridge that is suspended over nails, screws, and broken glass? So it's over, so it's suspended over. We've got that between us. It is highly likely that you would get a flat tire if you bicycle over a bridge that is suspended over those nails, which is just not able to put those pieces together. So all of that to illuminate that AI hallucinations exist. But why should we care? Well, if your business relies on AI to answer questions automatically without human oversight, or you rely on it to identify patterns, make predictions, generate text, or images on your behalf, then hallucinations can cause real risk, reputational risk, because of that. And that is why we're going to look at those risks that it might pose. So firstly, if AI, the first risk is erosion of brand identity, okay? So if you are sharing false or misleading information that includes those hallucinations, that can be quite damaging for your brand. And if you think about the idea that you might have a commerce system and you might use chatbots to answer people's questions, and it just decides that there's a new promo code on your behalf that absolutely doesn't exist. What's that going to do to your brand when someone actually tries to use it? Or maybe there's changes randomly to your refund policy or return policy, and so on and so forth. If you have inconsistencies with the way you speak to your customer across your touch points, I'm sure everybody here, or if you haven't, congratulations, but I constantly get spammed with the idea of AI social media managers. That screen's just gone off, by the way, which is they've all gone off, okay. Everything's okay over here. Ghosts! I did say make it scary, but I didn't think it was going to be scary for me. I thought they would be scared. That one started beeping. I don't know if that's any use. Ooh. Whoa, they heard me. This is going really well. You just play the cat. Yeah, I have basically memorized it, to be fair. It's an absolute banger. Anyway, where was I? I think I was talking about inconsistencies. So if you think about, I think Jeffrey mentioned it earlier about social media posts and so on and so forth, and you might want to change the tone between those specifics, but what if it was way worse than that? And actually you adopted a social media manager that was AI-based, where you were relying on them to generate the image, generate your strapline, generate the scheduling, and you just let it run free with that information across those different across your different touch points. It could be completely inconsistent as to how it's talking. It could decide that it wants to talk about astronauts and what they get up to. And you can then nullify or reduce your tone of voice because you're actually increasing the likelihood for inconsistencies in your tone of voice. When we think about how we might in the future use AI within Umbraco, if the content that is being generated by the CMS is just thrown out there to the world and we've got an entire blog, is that going to be consistently actually the tone of voice that we genuinely want it to be? So there's a risk there. There's also a risk around making decisions based upon misinformed information. So a lot of use cases for AI are to summarize large pieces of content or summarize large pieces of data on our behalf. And if that summary is inaccurate and goes unqualified, are you going to put processes in place that can react to those unqualified summaries? And what I mean by that is, again, if we look at commerce, for instance, you might have a load of rules that you could put in place that if someone doesn't pay a bill or, if they fall between a certain threshold, you might have you might remove them, or you might stop their billing process. Or, we work with a brewery who work essentially on credit. So if there's a wrong, inaccurate summary, we're going to take relatively drastic action because of that. Or it can, so if you're looking at those automated prompts, that can be a real risk. And if you're also thinking about HR policies, you could have a bunch of HR summaries that, again, take in data from a list of existing HR policies, and then for some reason it is seeing something that isn't there and trying to create policies on your behalf, and there is inaccuracies in that, which leads us on to our third point, which is around legal and regulatory risks. So if everybody, when was the last time someone read privacy policy or terms and conditions when they scroll down to the bottom? Recently? Okay. Well, sometimes those can be extremely long, right? And if you are generating those through AI, it can be problematic because it's unlikely that people are going and checking all of those reams of those policy documents that you're trying to generate on your behalf. Financial and legal statements presented by your business could be wrong. And again, if you are if you're using it for things like summary of financial data, those become publicly shared. And actually, you could share something publicly that is completely wrong. But you've just trusted that AI is going to get that right for you and is going to solve, again, all of that for you. So that's some of the risks, and we're going to sort of walk through how we avoid those risks. And quite a lot of sort of examples as we go through. So for this, we're going to focus on 2 routes for implementing AI, utilizing third parties and building your own. So if we first look at starting with third parties, I've put together a checklist for third-party AI adoption, and that starts with, is there a feedback process to continue to train the model? And this is about us understanding whether we should use this AI platform. Are confidence levels provided in terms of what the assertions are being made by the platform? Does it include governance? Does it include controlled acceptance or gateways where appropriate, so that we can, should we wish to, have human intervention? And lastly, are all relevant context points provided where possible, and are we able to achieve that? So we're going to take this list and apply it to a few third parties that we at True have used, and some that we are that we're aware of. So firstly, AI expression recognition. Similar to the gentleman who was accompanied by a ghost, we've used a tool called Adaptos to basically walk through user testing. We've walked users through commerce platforms to gauge their response from an emotional perspective, through branding and UX and so on and so forth, to see if they have a positive reaction, a negative reaction, or any reaction whatsoever. So we've used Adaptos to actually do a similar thing to see if people are having positive reactions, essentially. And it's an amazing tool, and we put together a white paper, which I probably should have a QR code for, but I don't, but it's on most of True's socials. But there are a few things that could make this tool better. And to help demonstrate that, one of the users who we walked through it, I think he was called Ryan, as he was being walked through one of the brand's websites to see the purchasing process, we also asked a question of, what is your favorite design brand? And he responded, Apple. And then after he said that and realized that he was speaking to a creative director and a head of strategy, he cringed at the idea that he was just going to say Apple was the best design process because it feels a little bit on the nose and kind of obvious. The AI tool correctly recognized him cringing, correctly categorized it as a negative reaction, but associated it to the brand that he was seeing on screen rather than contextually the answer to the question. So it was missing that semantic context as to how the question was being asked. Thankfully, we were able to have human intervention in terms of we were able to remove that negative reaction. But what isn't in place on Adaptos is the ability to actually give some feedback loops that's going to allow it to continue to train itself and so on and so forth, so that it might get that situational context, because again, it wasn't able to understand that the question wasn't about the exact task that it was trying to do. We also use it for prototyping and concepting with creative, and it's a great way of kind of getting to stories quite quickly. So we used it for St. Austell to show a campaign that we were working through with them. And top level, these all look pretty good, right? That could be a nice set of social media posts that could absolutely go out to Instagram or however we wanted to manage that campaign. But if we start to zoom in a little closer, we see that this person holds pints of beer a little bit weird with the old pinky sneaking underneath. They also seem to be missing part of their finger. So you can see that that social media post top level looks pretty good. As you dig in, we start to see a little bit of issue. If we move on to just a little bit of me time, these are people celebrating in the pub. And as we zoom in, we start to see that the eyes of these two chaps seem a little bit strange. There's like a foot rather than a hand, I think, here. And I have no idea. I'm just going to use my little buzzer. I have no idea whose arm that is, because I don't think there's a person attached to it. And then lastly, I'm pretty confident in this one, right? So this is a gentleman led on their bed. They're looking over a beautiful beach. They've got their cup of tea, and everything's good. But that is because we cut out the fact that his knees come out of his back, and that bed actually goes on for an extremely long time. And that's really kind of an elaborate way of trying to demonstrate that if we had allowed those generative images to be created with all of the lovely strap lines around it and then just instantly posted, we would have got those versions out, and then they would be associated with our brand, which will negatively affect it when you have all of those random inadequacies involved in them. So with generating videos, this is actually a really great example of what good can look like. So Veed.io is a way that you can generate videos, and all the prompt that I gave it was Roman history, because I really love Roman history. So I wanted to see what it would generate, and within about 90 seconds, it generated this video. You can see the UI that's kind of associating with it, and I'll just play the video super quick. Hopefully.
Imagine this: I'm Julius Caesar, conquering Gaul and crossing the Rubicon. The Roman Empire,
it's gone and collected
powerhouse of
facts,
innovation and conquest,
it's gone and collected little snippets of videos, which are all pretty good.
But beware, betrayal lurks in the shadows,
It's focusing
leading
on
to my
Julius
own
Caesar.
demise.
Caesar, why wouldn't you?
From the Republic to the Empire, Rome's history
And then
is a tale
lastly,
of ambition, glory,
it's
and
doing pretty
downfall.
well.
So grab your toga and join me on this epic
And then it
journey
lets
through
itself
Roman
down,
history.
so grab your tobet. I'm pretty sure it meant toga. And then you can sort of see that it's basically gone, I've had a successful video, and then grab your tobet, grab your Toby, and let's go. But importantly, what this allows us to do is see the confidence in the words. So it is already flagged that it's not sure. It thinks it's got something that it believes in, but it's also showing you a confidence level. So if we're able to react to that confidence because we've been provided it, so it might be the case that should we want to automate anything, we might set a limit as to what confidence we're happy with. So maybe we want everything to be 85% confident, and then we'll allow automations to happen, but anything below that, we're not going to send those out. And the fourth point that I made as to why assessing AI tools and the maturity around adoption was context. And I'm going to give you a short tale as to why context is important without providing any context as to why I used that GIF. So a teacher is teaching his class of school children about anime. And he learns of a wonderful tool that allows you to generate an anime picture that represents you. His school children are around 10 years old. He tries the tool, he tests it out, and he gets something he is happy with. He gives it his height, he gives it his hair color, he gives it his weight, and he's pretty happy with the thing and how it represents him. Now remember that he is then going to ask school children to potentially generate pictures of them, and this is anime, so these are the pictures that the school children were getting back. Because the context was missing, they weren't asked what their age was. They just know that it's trying to present their hair color, their height, their weight, and potentially, maybe, people that are generating anime images are more likely to accept these type of images than not. I don't know, but that's, without that context, there are assumptions that could be made. So, just to remind you of that checklist, we have a feedback process, confidence levels being provided, controlled acceptance, and context where possible. So then if we take that from using our third parties, and if we then look at how we might build our own, the actual considerations we need to make are starting in the same place. But importantly, we have a fifth one, which is around the quality of data that is being used. So I have a terrifying example of Microsoft, which I gave you a little bit of a spoiler from earlier on. Microsoft created a Twitter AI bot called Tay, okay? So Tay was created to interact with users, to answer their questions, and essentially do all the things that you might expect an AI-generated Twitter bot to do. Tay started its life as that sweet and innocent bot that we saw at the beginning. But Tay was trained on the content within Twitter itself. So you can see where this is going. So in 24 hours, as we discussed, Tay went from this wonderful AI bot to the one that we probably aren't particularly proud of. And in AI, there are lots of horror stories like that. So, and they are often related to data quality. So in that circumstance, we know that Twitter can be provocative, a dumpster fire, whatever you want to say. So the issue is with the data quality. So how do we tackle the issues with data quality? Well, this is where I've got some key understandings around data to what I believe to be quality data. We need to ensure we provide our AI systems with large volumes of high quality data. Just large volumes is not going to work. We need to focus on the fact that it is high quality. That data needs to be representative of the actual task that they are designed to perform. This transition is slightly slower on here, but the data should then be diverse and cover a range of scenarios and variations that the AI system is likely to encounter in its real-world application. The focus there is around diversity and diverseness of that data, so making sure it covers essentially all bases. And if we are providing data, it must be annotated to provide clear guidance and classification for the AI system to consume when that is appropriate. So certainly around machine learning, if we're looking at that supervised learning, we need to make sure that the annotations and the classifications that we're giving are really, really accurate and focus on what is important. And then lastly, we need to look at human values and considering them as part of the design of these systems, as well as the data that they are trained upon, because otherwise, there could be many issues that we will go into. So this list looks like this when you put it all together. And ultimately, that's basically our guiding light, right? So in absence of those things, in absence of those considerations, we start to get more ghost stories. Just waiting because I'm seeing people taking pictures. Otherwise, we get our ghost stories. So I'm going to tell you a story about a group of researchers who took to the noble and valuable task of trying to identify skin cancer using an LLM to do so. They fed their model 130,000 images that represented both diseased and healthy skin. So we have large amounts of data. Based on the data it was trained upon, the algorithm was then asked to classify a new image to see whether it believed it was diseased or healthy. Apologies for the weird image there. But because the data that was trained from diseased images was predominantly medical images, one of the parts of that process is to measure the lesion that might occur when your GP is talking about cancerous or malignant data. So essentially, we had a load of healthy lesions, and then we had unhealthy lesions that also included a ruler in those images. So you can probably see where this is going. The AI essentially had learned that the rulers are malignant, and actually a picture without a lesion or a body part was being categorized as a cancerous image. So what was missing in that circumstance? Well, we had large amounts of data, but it wasn't high quality. It wasn't representative of the task that they were designed to perform, because it is not supposed to be a already categorized image, and it was. The data wasn't diverse, and it didn't consider human values of all of the considerations that you might have. And the danger with this, specifically this scenario, is that if we think about our automated processes, if we were going to give a prescription or give anything that you might counteract as the process as to what happens when someone is diagnosed with cancer, and those things are automated, this LLM is going to start that process. So whether that's an additional, imagine how terrifying that is. Like, you are suddenly being miscategorized in that circumstance. And that's just one of many stories, so let's look at another one. Self-driving cars have been on the horizon for a long time. And part of the process that is about adoption testing is to analyze pedestrian tracking. So we need to know there's a person, right? So that we can do all of the things that we would expect for a driverless car to do when we see a person in our tracking. But it has been deemed that that tracking is less accurate with people with darker skin than lighter skin individuals. And that has subsequently been suggested that the models that were actually used to train that was predominantly men and predominantly white men. So that's terrifying. Imagine a situation where you are inefficient at something that is fundamental to what you would expect a car, and regardless of your race or gender. So obviously, in terms of things that are missing, there's quite a lot here. It's not representative of the task that they are designed to perform, because it's not representative of a huge amount of the population. Data was not diverse. It was not high quality because it wasn't diverse. And again, obviously, human values were not being considered there, because that just should never be the case and should never be allowed. There are still more ghost stories, and I realize that I'm saying something quite important and then putting, Luigi and Mario in between, but nevertheless. Recruiters can use a multitude of AI to do initial analysis of candidates to gauge suitability, and there are many different ways that can happen, but one or some of those tools basically train on historical data of recruitment, of understanding what specific companies might have recruited in the past so that they can suitably match who they might hire in the future. But I'd imagine there are lots of companies that potentially are not overwhelmed or proud of their previous hiring patterns and might want to outgrow those and might be proactively looking to be more diverse. And these AI systems, certainly in recruitment, have suggested that there can be biases against that. So Amazon actually had a tool that they scrapped because it showed a bias against women in their recruitment processes. And as part of, I believe it was still Amazon, but I'm saying it anyway, that same AI tool found two important factors to indicate job performance, which was that if the person is called Jared, they're going to be great. And if they like lacrosse, they will be a great candidate. And I'm sure many of you have friends called Jared who are great at lacrosse and would be wonderful hires, but it probably is less likely that they should be at the top of the list just because of those two factors. So you can see, again, this is about how the AI has started to find patterns that shouldn't be considered and has been trained on data that doesn't really make sense for them to consider and prioritize. There's also a scenario where predictive policing has used AI to look at specific areas and try to predict hotspots, but it's also been used to gauge the likelihood that someone should be given parole or probation and so on and so forth. And because it was trained on data that was unequal and it was considering race, it was deemed more, it decided that it was more likely that someone would reoffend if they were a person of color, which should not be a consideration that the AI tool should ever have in its data set. So in terms of what creates the situation where that might have happened, it's not considering any of the things that we might care. It's not considering human values. It clearly hasn't got representative data. It's clearly not high quality. And the overarching theme of these last cases is bias data in means bias data out. So we really have to consider what we are trusting to train any AI tools that we create ourselves, because although those are quite scary and extreme situations, that same bias data can apply to anything that we might be creating with it, whether it is our commerce tools or trying to understand some of our data sets in a better way, or project reporting and so on and so forth. It still have to consider that there can be bias in that data. And another risk that I wanted to highlight to people is that what can happen to your data when you actually interact with AI. So we use some tools, and then what actually happens over the other side of that black box. And it can be scary itself. So you can upload, what you can upload could actually be used to train other models without your knowledge. Private information could therefore be leaked from one platform to the other if the training data that you're providing is used on that other platform, and it can even be used maliciously, and I'm going to show you a couple of scenarios on that. So tools like Midjourney and DALL-E, I'm not saying specifically those, but image generation tools are trained on billions of images, right? We've talked about it a little bit. In September of 2022, an artist found that one of the generative AI tools that they were using had clearly consumed private medical information and then was now including that information in images that it was generating, which meant that if the prompt was something like, can you create an image of a person in their doctor's appointment, that their prescriptions and real prescriptions were showing up in the generated images. Which is terrifying, right? Who wants to know that their prescriptions are showing up elsewhere? And as that was learned, people then flocked to continue to prompt in that way to see how many prescriptions they could get and how many of them were real. So what you have to ask yourself, why is it being trained on such sensitive data? And if it is, what else could be? And this brings us on to talking a little bit about KYC. So KYC is know your customer. Some of us will have used it if we're doing stuff with financial information. And if you've ever signed up to Monzo or Revolut, KYC is where you might use it in banking. So you do a sort of face to camera or video to camera to say, I'm this person because I'm saying X, Y, and Z. Now, I've kept this link in, but I'm not saying this link does this. But this basically takes an image of you and then creates a video on your behalf. And we saw with the Eminem rap earlier that actually it's quite easy to potentially replicate someone's voice. So if you're able to replicate someone's image or the video of them, and you're able to replicate their voice, KYC becomes quite a struggle. And actually, is there a situation where we've given something which we felt quite fun to provide our data to, and then it's used against us to potentially steal identities and some scary stuff? An example, not quite as drastic as that, but I don't know if any of you saw this scenario. Scarlett Johansson basically declined the opportunity from OpenAI to replicate her role in Her, where she was basically kind of Siri. And then OpenAI released their voice version, which sounded exactly like Scarlett Johansson, but it wasn't her, it was generative, and therefore there's a load of copyright discussions that are happening off the back of that. So instead of her getting paid to provide her voice, they sort of just did it anyway, because they didn't need her. So we've covered quite a lot and had some random breaks in there. But I thought I would, and I'm kind of knackered, I'll be honest with you. So I wanted to just do a bit of a recap and some summaries. So I promised that I would cover a brief tour of AI, ghost schools and hallucinations, the risks that they pose, and how we can avoid some of those risks. And we've got, you probably won't be able to see those at the back, but we then talked specifically around 3 and 4. We talked about the erosion of brand identity being associated with a risk, misinformed decision-making off the back of what the hallucinations could pose to us, and the legal and regulatory risks that can also pose. And then how we avoid those risks is that list of 5 things. So utilizing feedback processes to continue to train the model, provide confidence levels and assertions when we, or make sure that the AI tools that we're adopting have those confidence levels and assertions shown to us, and definitely make sure that there's governance in place so that we have those human intervention moments and ability to make sure that we're tracking and intervening where it is possible. Make sure that we're providing all relevant context and making sure that we use quality data across all of those points that I made. And a couple of final points. In the world of AI, the potential to be great and the potential for peril is actually quite huge, and we're sort of in this situation where it can go either way. We sort of have to make these considerations as we go. And certainly when it comes to the data that we're providing things, AI will act as a mirror, right? So it will reflect back at us all of the good things, but it will also reflect back at us all of the bad things. And we have to consider that when we're putting data into our AI platforms. And a couple of final things. The EU are looking to create requirements around this, to think about security, to think about governance, transparency, and understanding of where some data sets are. And I think that'll be really important for other considerations like cybersecurity. And one point that I haven't got on here, but would be an entirely new talk in itself, is that sustainability is a big issue with AI. I think the big hitters have basically bought like nuclear size engineering to try and power their own models, because it's a bit of an arms race to whatever comes next with AI. And we have to consider, when we're also potentially making our AI platforms, does AI need to power this? Is that worth the risks that we're posing? You know, is it worth all those trees if we're actually just predicting something that doesn't need an AI tool to do it? Can a human already be good enough for those things? And the last statistic that I thought was worth sharing is 61% of survey respondents for Master of Code expressed concerns about increased spread of inaccuracy and inaccurate information online. And when all of the types of ways that you can hallucinate and false information can be shared by AI tools, I think that they're probably right, and who can blame them to do so? That is me, and I'm going to leave a little bit of a teaser for what might come next, in case there are any questions before I do.